Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Family and Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Thursday the 16th of May. Just a reminder that we have two new members joining us today, and I'd first of all like to welcome them. So we have Councillor Georgina Hill and Councillor Les Bowman. So welcome to FACS, and I'm sure that you will enjoy your time. And I'd just like to put on record as well a thanks to Chris Angus, our Scrutiny Officer, who left us recently. But we're ably supported by Sean here for a short period of time, and he'll keep me right until our new Scrutiny Officer is in place. So if we can take the agenda for this morning, one is to note the membership, which is correct, because I can see you're all here. Then the second item is to look at apologies for absence. So Leslie, do we have any apologies?
I haven't received any apologies, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we'll go on to the minutes of the previous meeting, which is from the 7th of March, pages 1 to 6 in your agenda pack, and this is for items of accuracy. So can I just check if anyone has any comments or observations about those minutes? If not, I'll happily sign them off as a true record. I'm not seeing any, so I will sign those off from the previous meeting. So thank you for that. As with every meeting, we have a standard item for disclosure of members' interests. You all record your members' interests, but is there anything particular to this morning's meeting which anyone wishes to disclose? And again, I'm not seeing any notice there. So with that done, let's move on to the first item on this morning's scrutiny, which is the School Transport Review, update May 2024. The last time we had this was June 2023. I'm going to ask Neil, first of all, to introduce yourself and then to take the report.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Neil Dorwood, Senior Manager for Education. So, as Wayne said, this is an update following the June report from last year. I think one of the significant changes now compared to then is the fact that we've now got the support of the best work streams with this, and we've benefited from the formal project management structure of that to really help things move forward. Now we have a structure of 3 different work packages. Firstly, the children's services work, which is within our direct control work in our directorate. We have the service review team work, which is an additional piece of work conducted by that team, and then the wider service areas which touch on to several other service areas, which are a bit of a catch-all for that additional third work package. I would just add that the children's services work package 1 has been very much supported by our parent carer forum and also our special schools and schools with special support bases within their sites. And that has really added value to that, and I think that is a credit to the Parent Carer Forum. We've been very active in that and would give them credit with that support, even to the fact that they've interviewed some of the new staff and teams with us as part of that work. I think it's important to mention as well that being part of the BEST programme brings a very formal and regular reporting structure as well, so actually we can keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on with this work much more regularly, so councillors and officers can keep a very close following on that rather than the less regular updates in this forum. But ultimately, I think today's report takes all of the areas of work and summarises that, and happy to take questions on any of the detail that is in the report. But I think, Audrey, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, if I can bring in Audrey, because you referenced something there called BEST. Yes. So I think, just for the sake of either any members or anyone watching this, just can we get a little bit of context on why this fits in, please?
Thank you, Chair. And just for scrutiny members, so I guess a dual hat role, just to say that I'm here as Exec Director for Children's. I would usually be here for that, but actually in the context of BEST, I'm the Senior Reporting Officer around the Best Value work stream, and the home to school transport rests within that work stream and the work that we're doing. There are 3 intended outcomes for the whole of BEST programme. That's about improving outcomes, whatever the topic is that we're looking at. It's improving the customer or the resident's experience, improving the staff experience as well as part of any of that review work. And then the third aspect is about being effective and efficient are we working in the most effective way, and are there any opportunities around savings that could be brought forward? Could we do it differently, do it better, and use the resources that we have allocated to do that? And that's the essence of BEST more broadly across the Northumberland County Council programme. But in this instance, one of the work packages, one of the programmes, is the Home to School Transport Review. So scrutiny members will remember that when you had the very first report around home to school transport, actually that's almost word for word why we were looking at home to school transport. It was about how could we make it better for our children and families in Northumberland. Could we be more effective and could we be more efficient in terms of that overall approach? So I thought that would just be helpful to set the context around BEST that Neil has referenced. The other aspect to say is that co-production with the Parent Carer Forum. They have been positively vocal around the work of the Home to School Transport team and the education team working together around listening to them and shaping what that could look like, particularly for our children with education healthcare plans and our independent travel training as well. So really positive words have come from that forum to underpin the work that the team's done. A really good example of co-production. Thank you.
Thank you. What I tend to do now is I tend to open this to members for questions. But before I do that, I just want a little bit of clarity on something, because you've touched on it, Audrey, there. And this is about this co-production. What evidence have we got that we've actually reached out to group service users to actually inform this policy? Because I just want to tease that out from this, just so we're aware. So is there anything you can just give me around that? Yeah.
So Neil may want to come in with some very specifics, but I can give one example. So if I think about the work we're doing in the Culcut and Berwick partnerships around the investment from the local authority around school buildings and the models that we're putting in place, that is being co-produced with teachers, head teachers, staff, governors in each of those localities, but also that community engagement and some of the specific groups within each of those localities have been part of the co-production work. And particularly, and I'm referencing SEND here, but we're particularly looking at that because as part of the home to school transport, we want to meet children's needs much closer to home rather than travelling around the county to access provision that best suits their needs. So ensuring in both the Culcut partnership, we'll have Barndale by the Sea, which is an extension of the special school from Alnwick, will be based in the Culcut partnership. And that means that less children will leave the Culcut partnership for their education. And we're framing and shaping the model in Berwick, particularly around how we meet the needs of the just about 70 children, I think, each day leave that partnership to have their education elsewhere. So it's a really kind of core anchor piece to make sure that that model includes the provision to meet needs, and then we're able to make sure they're educated much closer to home. It's a bit of a mantra in education, meeting needs closer to home. But in particular, engaging with a number of parent carer groups, not just the forum, but parent carer groups in the north has informed that work. Neil, you might want to talk more specifically because you've done that work.
Yeah, just in terms of specifics, I suppose if we look at some of the work that's in the first work package, the children's services specific one, independent travel training is a big part of that, a new service which we now offer to children and young people who are within reach of independence in their travel. And I think that one is where we're actually working on the ground with parents, carers, the special school and our new training team in such a very close way, because every single young person we are training is unique and their circumstances are unique, and every stage that we go through is actually co-produced, designed, signed off by the school, the parents, the young person themselves, and actually it is all fundamentally by agreeing for the best way forward for that individual young person by all of the stakeholders within the educational journey and their life chances. Looking more towards the kind of education providers, there is a piece of work as well whereby we're enabling those providers to actually deliver transport themselves for their pupils where that would be in the greatest interest of the pupils in the school. And certainly with the support of the transport team, we are very much enabling the school by supporting them with the transport experience that the council has to allow them to take on sustainably some of that responsibility for transport, and that has started to get some early adopters on board as pilot, and they are working very well. And as I understand it, the outcomes for the young people are better because of that very tailored approach that we're taking with the schools and the young people together. So just a couple of practical examples of how this work has been co-produced and is impacting in that way.
Thank you, Neil. I thought it was just important to kind of tease out this wasn't like a top-down thing, and we've involved groups. So, scrutiny, questions. So, Suzanne first.
Thanks. Yes, thanks for the report, and obviously you're doing a lot of work. I like the idea of the independent transport plan, and as Audrey said, obviously locality and area is important. What kind of frustrated me in this report was that there was no sort of granular detail on the money and the areas. I would like to see the cost of kids leaving different areas to go elsewhere, because this is obviously a massive spend in the budget. And I found it was very general on the area. There's 2 points that money's mentioned, but it would be good to see how much it costs, for example, children in the West to get to some of the specialist schools in South Northumberland. Likewise for North Northumberland, I would like to see those figures, because it would be good to know from how much is being spent getting those children around the area. That would help us ascertain need, and I think that's kind of key to trying to solve where, you know, how these kids, well, where these kids should be placed, really.
Yeah, I would add to that, we do have that granular level detail, pupil by pupil, and that is something that we analyse in the background as well to inform the work. Obviously, very much about outcomes and needs as well as that finance as well, and taking into account that bigger picture. But
Would we be able to see sort of the area costs for that, or?
I think is that a
So, what I'm trying to tease out, I think I'm getting where you're going with this. Are you looking at a cost-benefit analysis? So, for example, if it costs more to send young people to another part of the county, are we questioning ourselves and saying, would be better to have that provision in that locality?
Yes.
Is that what you're getting
So,
at?
for example, yeah,
Okay.
how much is it costing in the Western, the partnerships there, to transfer students outside of the partnership? Yes.
So that's where we're going with the question. So I think, Audrey, could you pick that up in terms of how do we look at those figures? How do we ensure that those figures for transport, that we don't just end up spending silly amounts of money, when in actual fact it might be better to school young people in particular localities? So if you could take that on, please.
Thank you, Chair. Reference to my earlier comment about developing provision in the localities. So we do have that level of detail, so we will be able to do some sharing of that. And that really has informed, because for me, we can't start to look at anything without understanding what the picture looks like before we decide the direction in which we're going to go. So we have that level of information. It links directly with the Send Place planning tool that we put in place, so that we know how many places are required in future needs from particular areas of the county. That helps us to develop the provision, and actually helps us to understand that the investment we are recommending takes place will actually make a big difference, going back to the improved outcomes, the improved experience for parents, families, young people, children, and being more effective and more efficient as part of that best. So the best programme will wrap around that. And we do intend actually to have a Send finance session with the scrutiny members. That's going to be one of the member development sessions. So that's probably the best forum where we can take you through that and have some various stalls and abilities for you to understand what those costs look like, what the needs are, why children are leaving that particular area. The numbers can be quite small. And I think even in the work that we do, we won't eradicate the ability to need to transport a child for a particular reason to an area of the county, but we will aim to mitigate the greater majority.
Okay, good question. Councillor Watson. Oh, sorry, Angie, sorry. Yeah, it was Angie. It was Angie, sorry.
No, so so I've looked at the report and it's really interesting, but obviously when we're looking at independent travel, it's impossible for a child from the West to access specialist education in Morpeth, so they couldn't get there themselves because of lack of transport really, and the link-ups are very difficult. But what how have you worked with parents in the West to find out information from them?
I think I would add to, with respect to that question, that it's a very new team, and we've actually just really entered delivery of the service. In fact, it was just 2 weeks ago we had our first graduate through the independent travel training scheme, which was a milestone which gave me confidence, because actually it's tested the processes we've designed, the systems we've designed, and the safeguards we've put in place. Really, that was the very first test, and we've been quite low key. And it is now that we're looking at those scale-up plans and how we can reach into other people's sort of geographical areas and sort of explore the art of the possible in terms of reaching, you know, the north, the west, and anywhere that isn't quite as densely populated or serviced by public transport, for example. I think part of that work is looking at our public transport networks and see who lives near those, and for those who do live near those, who are within reach of that independent travel, because there's a lot of things to consider within that judgment. But I totally appreciate that there is some geographical challenges, and I think fundamentally it is that public transport network that we're looking at as the solution in the majority of cases. But like I say, it's very, very early days in forging the plans at this point in time, because we have only just really trialled the processes themselves.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to see how you're going to introduce that scheme into the west of Northumberland when children travel over the county to get to their school. So I think that's going to be a really challenging job for yourself.
It is, and actually I would add we've got some quite good stakeholder support as well, with Northern Rail being interested in supporting us, we've got LNAR supporting us, and we've got Arriva supporting us, so we do have already some quite good background planning in conjunction and co-production with our public transport network, as well of course with the transport team within the council too. So we are starting to grow those that stakeholder group that's going to enhance what we do as the small team as well. I would like to think, as we make a success of this venture, that actually we can scale the team up to give us more reach into all of those areas as well. I would like to think in the future.
Angie, I want to bring in Audrey just to give you a little bit more information, because I think there's something else we can tease out of your question as well.
Thank you, Chair. So a couple of things, because I think it's important to note, Councillor Scott, that we have engaged with the schools and parents where children travel from the west to schools in other areas, so they have been part of that engagement. But the other aspect around the independent travel for me goes beyond school. This is about giving them the independence to access whether it's groups or social groups in the evening, to be able to do some not necessarily after school events, but community access. And we know that when we had our last SEND inspection, one of the key things the young people said was, it's great we can go to school, but actually it's really hard to go to the badminton club or to do this and to do that. So our aim with the independent travel is to be able to support that, accepting that that has some travel limitations at times. But it is absolutely in the middle of our preparation for adulthood plans. So to be able to support more young people into work, into community access and into activities that's beyond school age, to have that level of independence, including travel skills and travel confidence, and giving parents and carers the confidence, is really, really underpinning everything that we do in this work.
I agree, Audrey. You know, parents do their best to get their children to become independent, but when a child travels miles to get to school, they're not included in their own communities. And the transport links from Prudhoe to Blythe to Morpeth is impossible. So
Thank you. I've got Mr Hodgson and then Councillor Hill.
Yeah. Just ask, is this one of the budget headings that's very difficult to control? Does it tend to run away with itself? And if so, where does the overspend come from? In other words, when you then come to the end of the financial year, and is best value another term for looking at cost cutting?
I'm happy to answer the money question. So yes, it does. So Northumberland was overspent within the Sen Transport budget, as was every other council in the country. It's a national issue, not specific to Northumberland as a large rural county. It is a really challenging area of budget for everybody just because of the increase in education healthcare plans. And once it is within the plan and written down, it forms part of the Sen Code of Practice, and that's our statutory responsibility to provide that transport. So where does the money come from? It comes from Northumberland County Council. They underpin that money and invest that money because we provide that, we have to provide that. So it is provided from core funding within Northumberland, core funding from Northumberland. What was the last bit of your question? Oh, best value, sorry. Should have remembered that one, shouldn't I, as SRO? So I wouldn't say it's another word for savings. It's about doing things differently and ways of working. And that's exactly why when we started this original transport report and review of what we were doing, we wanted to see if there were different ways we could do this that primarily was better for a parent, carer, when they are accessing a school place. Can they see whether they're eligible for transport? Can we make it much easier for someone as a resident in Northumberland to understand the journey and make choices that we can help them with? And that was part of our overall approach from day one. So dating best in that respect. We would always want to make sure that we were spending the public pound in the most effective way that we possibly could. And the best programme, you know, I chose to be the SRO on best value. And that is because I enjoy looking at work really carefully and making sure that we are spending in the right ways and making it more child-centred, family-centred in terms of approach. So for me, I wouldn't say saving money. I would perhaps spend the money in different ways, and that's really the essence of the effective way of working within Best.
There doesn't appear to be any way you can actually cap this particular budget. This budget will just be an open budget, presumably. Potentially.
Yeah. It is challenging for every local authority.
Have we got 10 figures from last year of what the overspend was?
Not off the top of my head, but I will get that to you. Yep. I can provide that for you.
And so the risk is presumably then this will just continue to increase. I mean, does that alarm you? Or, I mean...
Yeah, and the Cabinet have not long been cited on everything that we are doing. Mm-hmm. Schools Forum have a whole programme around how we have a contribution from the high needs budget. And so our Schools Forum are very cited on all of the work that's currently being done. Mm-hmm. Our Cabinet and administration are very much cited on all the work that's being done. But ultimately, we have to provide the transport. Yeah. Our additional challenge is being a large rural county.
That's what I was thinking, yeah. Thanks.
So, thank you for that, Audrey. Councillor Hill, and then I've got Councillor Swinburne. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of general, quite basic questions which probably betray the fact that I'm new to this committee and these discussions. I have to say, my experience, the transport team, Mark Cusack, are always incredibly helpful. The two weaknesses I've identified in the past, so to look reassurance that these are being addressed. One is communication, when I sometimes... well, actually, recently, I won't obviously give the name and the precise detail, but a parent said, you know, my pupils had to leave the school, they're now travelling this distance and I'm paying 50 quid a month or something, which is just unaffordable for me. So around the communication of the scheme, also around eligibility and the use of discretion. I know, Chair, you were actually involved a few years back with somebody who was barred from, or group from, travelling to Newcastle for a course because they said it was out with Northumberland, they should go to Ashington, but it's actually just as the same price and a lot more convenient to go down to Newcastle. So sure, it's around the right use of discretion for the eligibility. And finally, on the cost, and you make a really good point, it is an open-ended budget and maybe it just has to be, and might be bound by law and maybe it's too simple. But one thing that always strikes me, I think I'm right in saying it's basically one person, one pupil, one taxi. Is that right? Or is it different? That's not right. Okay, so if you could explain how that works, because that does seem a particularly expensive way of doing it. So thank you.
Yeah. So if we can just pick up the two things I picked up there. One is the communication issue, which is internal. The other one is around that eligibility criteria, whether that's changed or been more flexible. So we can pick up on that and the last point as well.
Yeah, I think I would add one of the things that is being worked on with our digital and IT team and our transport colleagues and children's services colleagues is the application process and the clarity around actually entering the transport system as a family, as a young person. And that is something where we want to improve that resident experience, and that will include the communication naturally. And that is some feedback that we gained from the public consultation during the original review, that actually the application and communication processes weren't as accessible or satisfactory to everybody. Some people were happy, not all. And what we are about to launch is a repeat of that same consultation, so we can take stock on where the resident opinion is now, and we will do that annually as well, so we can continue to gain that user satisfaction feedback and act on that. So I think that is one of the big communication changes, where we'll better understand the audience and their things they're satisfied with and things they're not yet satisfied with, so we can put some actions into place for that. So I think that covers off the communication side, potentially.
I'm happy to answer. So in terms of eligibility, so I think what we're probably talking about there is the transport policy. David? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So actually the transport policy is, I'm going to say, written by education but implemented by the transport team. Mm-hmm. He's nodding, so we've got that right. And it's important that that is consistently applied across the local authority, so that we're ensuring everybody has the ability to access and can be considered for each of their choices. If parents choose for their children to go to a school that they're not eligible for transport, then they are liable for the costs of transport unless the child has an education healthcare plan. And that is within our statutory responsibilities. We do often have seats available on transport that can be purchased by families, parents, that children can access those seats, and that is arranged through the home to school transport team. It usually is towards the end of September, once we know all the places are taken and settled down, before we're able to confirm that they're available for anyone to purchase and use. And we are careful, and we do consider, particularly around post-16, for example, and that can be either access to A-levels and particular A-level combination choices at a range of schools, or for a vocational course, in a post-16 for our colleges. Of course, we would want to always support Northumberland College and ensure our children really accessed education in Northumberland. That's our first priority. And so if the course is delivered at Northumberland, then we would encourage everybody to access that. But we would review, as we have done in the past, if there are occasions. I also get them not just for Newcastle, I get them for access to Borders College. So kind of going out to the west as well as coming down to the south. So we review each case individually as to whether or not they're able to access transport or get to a quicker route, or access a course that is running in other areas of the county as well.
Just ask it. So if, and have had the situation before, so obviously if they've got defined educational needs and they have to go out of the area, that's obviously part. But if, say, you have and had cases, for example, pupil wanting to leave a school because of bullying, they've alleged they've been sexually or physically assaulted by another pupil or even a teacher or something. I mean, other circumstances where they'd want to move, that's where I'm getting at, is that when the discretion is used.
Yeah, we would deal with those on an individual basis. And I realised I didn't answer your third question, which was about one person, one taxi. Sorry, I wrote them down. So we do have a number of opportunities. So sometimes there is one child in transport because of their location, and Neil and David might want to come in on this, or because of their particular needs, and it would be recommended that it was a single travel on that case. But where we can, we will have a number of children in the appropriate sized vehicle travelling together.
Just add to that, sorry, if that is okay, that just to quantify that a little bit, I don't have the total number in transport and send transport at my fingertips right now, but of several thousand, I think my last count was 78 single occupancy vehicles based on complex needs and geographical complexities. So I think that is the significant minority.
It's just interesting because all the parents I speak, they all seem to be there's people just in a taxi, but obviously elsewhere, depending on circumstances. You're not barred by law picking up two pupils, no. Right? Okay, that's fine.
So I think there is flexibility in the system, so that's fine. Councillor Swinburne, and then I've got Paul Rickard.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, officers, for bringing this report here. It has grown in detail quite considerably from over the reports that have come to this committee. I'm happy that we continue to provide this service and look to improve on it continuously. It's not just something that we stipulate, this is what you've got and you've got to take it. But we continuously, as I say, look to engage with all stakeholders and individuals for improvement. And that's rightly what we need to do, because we always continue to look for that. And this is more for some public confidence, anyone that might be watching. More recently, we've endured some more and more industrial action, sometimes at very short notice. And what I want to ask is, what provision is being made for these instances to combat that and continue to provide the service, just to provide some of that public confidence for anyone who may be watching?
I'll come in first, and I think David probably is best placed to come in. So if I can give a couple of examples. So we were aware of some likely passenger transport strikes. They were indicated, but actually there was a significant amount of work and a secondary plan in place to ensure that we got children, particularly those of the public examination age group, into schools for the work, because it's coming up to that period of time. But David, I'll ask David to expand on that a little bit more. But I would say the team worked very swiftly on our fleet of foot. So we also recently had a railway crossing closed because of the Northumberland line work, and alternative arrangements were put into place, communicated out to school and out to parents once we knew what they were, and ensured that children were still able to access. So it is a fleet of foot service. They are very reactive. You're right, sometimes we get these, late, they come to us late in the day, but to assure you and everybody watching, we don't sit back. There is action immediately and a plan put in place. And I'll just ask David, because it is David's team who work on that fleet of foot.
Thanks, Audrey. In terms of that, in terms of the industrial action, we've had two sets of potential action, or one set of actual action. So Go North East went on strike earlier this year, and that affected the west of the county. And then Arriva, there was a possibility of a strike more recently, but luckily that has now been settled, and the strike isn't happening. So the benefit we have as a council is the passenger transport team not only look after home to school transport, but they also look after the public transport in terms of the supported services that we commission as a council as well. So when Go North East went on strike, we were able to quickly look at what the implications of that would be in terms of school children, and we were able to put additional services on that actually managed to get those children to school throughout that period. And in terms of the cost of that, because we weren't paying Go North East for the supported services, we were able to use the funding that we would have been paying to actually put that in place. It didn't mean we could provide a replacement full public transport service. That wouldn't have been possible, but we're able to deal with the getting the children to school that were eligible for free transport. Arriva would have been a more difficult situation, has to be said, that we've got a much bigger network in Northumberland, but as Audrey said, as soon as we were aware that there was a possibility of that strike action, we started making plans to see how we could deal with that, and those were all ready to go, but obviously we were pleased that the industrial action was called off.
Good question. So I've got Paul Rickard, and then I've got Councillor Chicken as well.
It was just a question about the inequality, really, because I guess, one, did schools really give you good feedback in terms of where they were hoping this to go? Because a number of schools now asked to operate for longer days. So, and at the minute, my understanding is most buses leave most schools at a set time. And then it's the challenge of, I guess, when we talk about inequality, those who live much further away from a conurbation where secondary school usually is, how do they get access to those things like homework clubs, after school clubs, which are just as important for some children? And I guess I'm wondering, was there any feedback about how complicated that is to achieve a balance? Because there's choice about sometimes where we live for some people, but equally there aren't for others. So how do we mitigate off those factors without saying we're going to put on 5 buses over an evening for staggered finishes? But I'm also concerned, I've heard it a little bit more now, in terms of consequences for behaviour. Children can be kept behind at school and then they miss the bus. And okay, that's a choice in terms of behaviour, but for some children, sometimes that isn't a choice. And I just wonder what kind of mitigations can we put in now, or did that get any kind of formal feedback in the consultation work that's been done in communication with stakeholders?
Certainly in terms of the consultation, there wasn't any strong feedback in that particular context, to be entirely honest. I think one thing that I would say is that in conversation with schools, that topic has come up, particularly around those schools who have been interested in having some devolved budget to deliver their own transport flexibly, so they can actually, for reasons of getting children to school in a more regulated way, getting to school more with better attendance, for example, because it's more likely that a school employee would put in more significant effort of getting a child from the farm home into the bus rather than a contracted taxi driver, for example. So I think the schools have, and all of those flexible wraparound opportunities as well of later days, flexible finish times, etc. They are the things that the schools that are most interested in doing some of their transport themselves have put forward as their drivers for doing so. So I think that particular initiative has that as part of its kind of objective.
And I guess in terms of that then, so if schools are asking for that level of devolved, particularly for attendance, because it's everyone's concern at the moment, are there opportunities for that which are more widely available?
Absolutely, yeah. We have actually put an expression of interest out in the past around that, and we've got one school who has taken that up to date. We've got 2 more schools in conversation, and we have just gone out with another round of expressions of interest as well to try and get that. We wanted to start carefully and cautiously, get the function of this service, which is new, correct. But we've got one example now which is very successfully in place, and we're looking to scale that up as well.
And I guess the last part of that question is that based on the data for attendance as well? Are the 2 marrying up, or is it just the schools who could effectively afford to put in a little bit of extra money towards making that transport work? Or are we going to target that at those schools where attendance is low, and we think actually, for example, an attendance bus will probably really support that?
Each school in conversation has come forward with slightly different reasons, attendance being one of those reasons. So I think they do have unique reasons based on their own circumstances. And I think the opportunity is significant. We would want to grow this cautiously because we know it is not currently the core business of what a school does in the day, and we can't expect them to take too much responsibility because there's risk comes with that, and we have to make sure they're going to be able to deliver the service robustly. But I think there is, on this particular initiative, there is a particular potential for growth on this, which is significant. I think as well what's coming forward is that not only do we get greater outcomes in terms of the attendance, the readiness to learn, but equally as well that it is a value for money option too, and we can get to compared to a contracted transport arrangement, the schools seem to be able to do it sustainably for a better value in cost terms as well.
Thanks.
Before I bring Eve in, I think you're raising a really interesting point here, because this is relatively new. So I'm pretty sure that what you'll be doing is capturing some of the good examples of where that budget can be used locally by a school or cluster of schools to provide some of the things that Paul's referencing. So number one, is that as we move on, being shared with the school partnership heads, so that they can see it's an example of good practice and they may want to take it on. And two, I'd quite like to have something come back to this committee looking into that, because this is innovation in delivery, which I think is probably what best is, probably a better way of looking at it. But I'm really interested in how using fixed budgets can provide some of that flexibility and actually more appropriate support for some of our students than this contracted model, which is it rocks up at 3:15, it leaves at 3:20, and that's it. So I'd quite like something coming back on that. So two, one is how we're sharing this with heads. Two, about bringing something back here.
Interestingly, at the last expression of interest round that we've gone out of this, the second round of expression of interests, the first response we got was from the school that has actually already taken up this service, offering to support other schools as well. So actually we've got that kind of that network growing on this, which I think is it's not directly us doing that, but we've enabled that to occur, and that is going to be a very good support mechanism. But I think once we get confident that it's working well and we've got some outcome data to demonstrate that robustly, I think there is a good news story to put out there to the heads of the schools to and further encourage their uptake.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just thinking about the report coming back, the work and the information, that we have to date, and we gathered all of this before we did the review, was we looked at all of the transport costs by partnership, by school. So the detail that Neil has is the average journey cost. We've got some high cost journeys that offer individuals. So we'll be able to bring that back, and we'll use that as the baseline benchmarking for some of the new models going forward, so that we can check back for that effectiveness. Because for me, it is about, if we do that very differently, we release resources to be able to be used better in a different way. If schools wish to then take the contract in terms of doing their own transport, they actually then have a vehicle that's available to be used for the rest of the day, so they're not having to hire vehicles throughout the day for people to go for trips or journeys. Perhaps it offers more opportunities for external visits, more, I'm going to say ad hoc, I mean planned, but rather than have to bring in an expensive coach, it's more that they can do 2 to 3 journeys ad hoc than bring in one coach and take everyone away. So there are multiple potential benefits, but Neil's right, we wanted to do this carefully and relatively small to get it right, try and find out where the challenges were before we started to expand that, and growing that peer-to-peer network will be really key within this.
Thank you for that. Eve.
I'm really glad that you brought up the situation with the level crossings. It caused absolute merry hell. I spoke to you just hours, I think, after we got the information, and you were straight on it. Thank you to everybody within the team that dealt with that. Unfortunately, the information from schools to parents was very delayed. We had a lot of parents saying that they didn't get information until maybe a few days beforehand. That caused a lot of problems with parents in general, but what feedback I was getting from SEND parents was that they didn't have enough time to prepare their children for the change in route, the change in bus stops, the anxiety around that. A lot of our children have their healthcare packages but are in mainstream school, which is a credit to this council that we can actually do that within our schools. But it does mean that comes with additional challenges. What really needed to happen was an all-round approach, not just from the council, because I think you did your bit really well, but we had multiple other parties involved. We had Network Rail, we had Phoenix, who were operating shuttle buses on behalf of Network Rail. We then had Arriva, we then had the school bus companies, and none of it was joined up at all. So nobody knew where they were going, what they were doing. There was no signposts anywhere for children to read to say, this is where you need to stand for this amount of time only, and then next week it's going back to normal. The kids were up in arms. They just didn't know what was happening, and neither did parents. That information getting to parents was really slow in some cases, not all of them, but in some cases. I tried to speak to the Federation head on a number of occasions and couldn't get anywhere. I assume he was absolutely bombarded by parents asking. We needed that approach, that joined-up approach from all parties involved, and I wonder if it's something that, as a council, we can impress upon these other parties to see how important it is, particularly for our SEND children. Thank you.
So, it's obviously an important call. So what Councillor Chicken was saying there, it's about lessons learned, I'm guessing. So I'm assuming some of that will have been picked up and we'll have be adopting that. Yeah. So I hope that gives you that assurance on that one. Right. So I don't see anyone else who wants to speak. So what we have in the report on page 7 is a recommendation. And it's to note the achievements and progress with recommendations, actions within the transport review. What I would also like to add to, obviously I'm assuming everyone's quite happy to do that, but I would like something that Neil said earlier on brought back as well within the recommendations, which is the user satisfaction data, because we're now asking what users actually think of the service, and I think it'd be really good for us to get that so that we can get a bit of a temperature check and see where support or gaps or really good things are happening. And as a scrutiny committee, we can use that to inform and challenge and provide, you know, that valuable input that hopefully we do. So on that note, thank you very much for the report, and I look forward to seeing some of the updates coming up. Next on the agenda is item number 6, which is pages 15 to 24 in your pack. It's family hubs. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Graham to introduce this, and then I'm going to bring Marie in, and they'll both introduce themselves for new members so you know exactly who they are. So, Graham, if I can bring you in first, please.
Okay, good morning. I'm Graham Reiser, Director for Children, Young People and Families here, and I'll let Marie, when she gets sat down as well. Can we also have the presentation up on the screen?
Sorry,
Thank you. And just while Marie's getting the stuff again, this is an update requested by this committee around our family hub development. And just to be clear, Northumberland are one of 75 local authorities nationally who are developing the family hub approach, and Northumberland are one of only 15 local authorities who have had trailblazer money to move further and faster. And our approach has been to build on the children's centres that we have had in Northumberland from the Sure Start days, but basically we're developing the family hubs to be an all-age support option and opportunities developments, so not just the 0 to 5s of the children's centres as previously. This development is about the range of ways within our family hubs, but also in partnership, which is crucial if we are going to effectively support our children, young people and families the most effective way across the partnership as well. So that's the context of that. As again, this is an update as requested by this committee. So I'll hand over to Marie to introduce herself and then just take us through the developments.
Yeah. Hello everybody, my name is Marie Roberts. I'm Head of Service for Social Care and Early Help. Obviously I'm aware that you have had sight of the Family Hub update report. What I've done is pulled together what I think is the key highlights within a presentation just to make it a little bit more visual for members. So I'll just run through that now. As Graham has already said in his introduction, our family hub model is very much based upon what we had previously with Sure Starts, knowing that Sure Starts were really for smaller children, those parents from conception right until the age of 5. But Family Hubs builds on that and gives an offer to our young people right up to the age of 19 or 25 where there is SEND. So this map is just really to highlight visually so that members can see where our family hubs are based. We do have 11 purpose-built family hubs with 7 dedicated outreach points. And on top of that, we also, I think what's important for members to understand is that we do actually go out to families where need be. So we are constantly looking at where our referrals are coming from, where the data is saying that we need to be delivering services for families. So it's not just about families coming to the main sites, it's about where do we need to go out to deliver. We've got a little bus, for example, that we can go out and deliver within school environments, within community centres if need be. One of the minimum criteria that the DfE did ask us to create was what they call parent carer panels. We have now 11 parent carer panels set up across Northumberland, and that's around co-production and consultation with our parents and carers. So it's not just about officers doing to our families or putting out services, creating support that we think families and children want or need, but it's very much about listening to our families and co-producing. So some of the main things that we have achieved that we've co-produced with our families, we've done a lot of consultation around how our centres should look, the feel around them, the web page, family app that we've created, what our leaflets look like, so they're as user-friendly as can be, and things like our digital offer, so how accessible that is, as well as planning various events and what our timetables look like across our hubs. The data that we've got on here is just really a snapshot to show you what type of families we have that sit on our parent carer panels. So you can see that we are trying to reach our seldom heard groups. So we've got a mixture of, not just your mums on there, but we've got dads on there, parents to be, parents where there's or carers where there's children with SEND. We've got a member from the BAME community and cared for children as well. And the last, chart shows you across the county the number and where our parent carer panels are and the number of parents that are attending them. So it's an ever-moving feat. We are constantly recruiting, we're constantly looking to grow our parents and carers who are involved in driving forward our family hub offer. I've pulled out co-location integration because I do think it's important that members are aware that this is not just about council staff supporting families, but it's a whole network of support for our children and families out there. So it's about joining up services, for example, working with GPs and primary care across the county. We've had a lot of referrals in from our GPs, which is quite unique to Northumberland, I will say. So we've got really good links right across, as well as with health visitors, school nurses, and other partners such as registrars, midwives, EOTAS, obviously linking in with our social care colleagues, and working with family time. Now, we do have a lot of staff that are based in our hubs as well. So that's our family help staff, but also we do have some social care teams in there, some midwives and health visitors are now based within our family hubs as well. And families can come and get births registered as well within the hubs, which I think is an absolute great offer. As well as having, a front of house offer, so somewhere that families can come to and see and get support from staff, attend sessions. It's also important to note that all of our families can't obviously get all the time and equally don't want to come to sessions all the time if it's more convenient for them to log on to an app, to go onto a website, to do something virtual. So we've made sure that we haven't just got that frontline delivery, but we've also got a really good enhanced digital offer for our families. We've got a QR code which families can scan, which is really, really simple, which would take families to the front page of our offer so they can see what's going on within our family hubs and they can see what other support is out there for them as well as accessing things like parent support, dad pad, and joining virtual courses online. In terms of our older young people, I think it's really important to say that when we had Sure Start, as I've already mentioned, it was very much a young child offer. But what family hubs do is enhance that offer. So we are looking at developing more support for our older young people here in Northumberland, and we're in the process of looking to see what that is, what that looks like. So we're developing a coordinated approach for young people up to the age of 25. What we do know from various consultations is that there is a good offer out there. So when I talk about the offer, it's not just about sort of youth club type provision, but it's all that coordinated provision that our young people need around, physical support, around sexual health, looking at their emotional well-being, their mental health, supporting them with education, so getting back into school or looking at post-16 education, and that employability support as well. Which is really, really important, even down to things like we are getting our staff trained to be able to support parents with sleep, because what we do know is sleep is a huge issue for teenagers. It's not just about, babies, it's about teenagers, and we all know if you don't get the right amount of sleep, how that can impact on your ability to function, going to school, your demeanour, your presentation, and a young person's emotional and mental health. So we're all looking at a package of whole family support, and we're working with Thriving Together, who is part of looking at a network with our VCS colleagues to grow that support, to look to see where it's needed, what type of support, to look at joint funding bids, and to plan moving forward what that network looks like. I've just pulled out some of the key projects that we have delivered recently. We've got Eyes on the Baby, and we have had a lot of practitioners, not just council staff, but right across the children's network, who have been trained on sudden unexplained death in infancy. So that's more than 170 practitioners to be able to support and educate parents around safe sleep, which is a huge bonus to any parent who may have that difficulty, that struggle, that worry when they're pregnant, when they're becoming a parent, and during the course of their child's life. We are really focusing on engaging dads as well, and remembering that we have dads around who, for whatever reason, may have limited access to come and support their children. They may have work commitments. They may feel that family hubs isn't for them. It's it's more of a mum's offer, but we're really making sure that we have somewhere to go for dads. They can come and get the support, dads groups, and we have the dads app as well, so fathers can log into this app, and it gets support which is tailored around male carers. And to celebrate that, we did have a Dads Matter Summit in February, which was really well attended across the partners. We had a whole range of different people representing different groups, to talk about the importance of engaging carers who are male. And hot off the press, we've just been given level 3 accreditation from UNICEF for being baby friendly within our family hubs, which again is really unique, really proud of that. A lot of work went into that from hub staff, midwifery, HTFT, so it was very much a partnership model, and that should be hopefully coming out in the press very soon. And just a little bit of a snapshot of data, and I don't think I've put this in the report, and again, hot off the press, just to be able to give you some key highlights to show how well used early help, family help and the family hubs are. There has been a 23% increase in new memberships within the first year that the hubs were set up, and that's ages right across the piece, so that's not just 0 to 5s, that's our older young people as well. We've also seen, as I said, an increase, and you can see there in the data, the bottom left-hand side, as I've said, of children aged 6+ becoming members, so they are able to access activities that they used to not be able to do as part of the Sure Start offer previously. There's been an 80% increase in the number of sessions attended, so that's 23 data versus 21. So that's not just about we are putting on more sessions in more places, but we're able to reach a wider audience of our parents and carers who are attending them. And there's also been a 50% increase in family help. Now, family help is more of a case management, so that's where our practitioners work with our families after an assessment. It's a lower level than social care, and we assess families and we put a team around the family in place to be able to have a coordinated plan to support families moving forward. So that has increased since January by 50%. So just to give you a few other little tidbits there, so you know what I'm talking about. In the past year, we've had 4,017 requests for early help support, 1,330 family episodes, so that's families who have been open to or started to work with our family help provision. And 80% of those families who have worked with us, when we've closed the case, those are being deemed as being successful closures, so we've been able to move them on and support them in at least 2 areas. And I've just added on the back there some family feedback, because it's important that not only do we co-produce, but we get that feedback and we close the loop with our families. So we are constantly asking our families by, you know, we get sort of written feedback, we give them questionnaires in terms of, you know, how have things been for you, what has been successful, what is there still to do, what do we need to change, because we do know that we're still in early days of our family hubs. The programme hasn't finished yet, it doesn't end until March 25, so we've still got quite a lot to achieve before then, and then obviously ongoing from that stage. So that's a bit of a snapshot, whistle tour of our family hubs, and I guess me and myself and Audrey and Graham are open to any questions from members.
So Marie, thank you for that, and Graham as well. Before we go to questions, can I just point something out in the recommendations, because this is what I want to get out with this. So it's scrutinise, discuss and amend as necessary, including the priorities moving forward. So make sure your questions relate to that, because there's some really good stuff in there. And I think, you know, having a good deep dive into this will be a really good session for us. So on that basis, I think Councillor Chicken wanted to go first, and then... right.
Thank you. I recently came across a lot of the programmes and things that you have running for fathers. Because I had a resident who is a much older and single father. And we tend to concentrate on young parenting who are doing it on their own or sort of strange circumstances. But we don't often look at fathers, and we don't often look at older parents as well. This new app that's been designed, which we're calling the Dad app, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. For him, he wanted something that he could access at all hours of the day and night, that he didn't necessarily have to go anywhere to get to because of his circumstances. I went through it with him, and the look on his face was priceless. It was absolutely priceless that this was there on his phone that he could access at 2 o'clock in the morning. I've been really, really impressed with the amount of work that's gone into including fathers and tailoring to fathers, because fathers and mothers are different. The way they approach things are differently, and their roles can be different. Sometimes they're the same, but sometimes they can be quite different as well. This has just been absolutely fantastic. What I would like to see from you is where we're going to go with that in the future, because what it is right now is absolutely incredible. I hope it continues. Do we have plans to do any more to that, or are we just seeing where that's going for now and then looking at plans in the future? Thank you.
Thank you for that. It's good to know that it is being acknowledged that there is some good work going out there. As you say, the Dad Pad is great, and we are hoping to keep it in the future and absolutely build on it, so that there's more support for parents in carers who are male, right across the age range, right from being, you know, brand new, you know, the partner who's just conceived, they've never, you know, had a baby before, they're young or older or whatever age they may be, right into it might be their 5th or their 6th child, but actually the issues that they may have, and you know, the way society changes and what that means to then have a 5th child, and how to manage, you know, all of their children while giving their partner that support. And we are looking to build on that. So we're looking to have more support digitally, but also what support we offer within the hubs themselves as well. So more tailored and thought out groups for parents who are male and carers who are male. So whether that's activities that dads can come together to attend, because we do have, and we are listening not just through the parent carer forums, but whichever way we can. And the feedback we're getting from some male carers is that they don't particularly want to come to sessions that are primarily where there is females there. They feel a little bit excluded. They want something different. That's not all of them, but we want to be able to cater to everybody. So we are looking to put on more sessions that will just be focused on male carers, and then during the course of the programme and after the programme, we'll continue that journey of co-producing with our parents, and hope to get more dads who are members of our parent carer forums to be able to take their feedback on board and to build on it. And support groups for dads as well, so things like Auntie's Man Club type of support groups, to be able to have those, so that men have somewhere to come and talk to other males who are maybe in the same boat, and get that support that way.
And thank you for that. Oh, Graham, yeah.
And I think just interesting, one of the learnings about the virtual offer, again, coming out of the pandemic actually, was actually how we managed to engage fathers in a flexible way. So there wasn't a set time during the day where you came to a group. Actually, to have been able to do that virtually and have those virtual meetings, we could have dads from all over the county coming at different times where it actually matters. So actually our learning from that virtual engagement is kind of filtered through, and we continue to try and evolve that as well.
Thank you. Suzanne.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. It's fantastic. And like Councillor Chicken, I think the dad focus is absolutely brilliant. It's key. And, building on the absolute foundations that were put in place by Sure Start and taking it to a bigger scope. And I think that's amazing. Where I've found the problem, and I think it's referred to, actually, I've just seen on page 19, and it's with the sessions that are running. So when I share this stuff about, especially sort of send older kids, sort of teen kids, send sessions, I've put them on various comms throughout Hexham, and it's timing. It is timing. And it kind of ties into, I think, what Graham's just said as well. So the flexibility of some of the sessions, parents would like to come, but obviously with older children, a lot of them work. And it's kind of, some of the sessions were kind of in the day, the working day. And I think that's the feedback I've had. That's the only sort of thoughts that I have there. But maybe more sort of hybrid online would help with that as well.
Yeah, we are constantly developing and streamlining what our offer is. We're in the process of re-looking at that, and it will be an ever-changing feat, I guess, depending on where the need is, what our parents are telling us, what type of activities they want to see us delivering. We obviously have that core offer, and what we've got at the moment is what we call PEEP, which is very much around our engagement with children and supporting them with their literacy and with their communication skills, and how they learn through play. So that will be our core offer moving on, but we'll constantly be listening and taking that on board and moving things around to be able to deliver the best services we possibly can for our parents. So that's definitely noted, and we look at that.
Definitely Councillor Watson this time.
Thank you. Again, what Suzanne said about Sure Starts were an absolutely fantastic initiative. We know that throughout the country, and I was pleased to see that the Blythe West Centre remained open and is part of the Family Hub programme. But I am going to talk about youth services because Councillor Ball's not here and she would knock me if I didn't. So I know that you've said that you're looking at developing what that looks like, and I happen to notice that you've got new groups at Blythe and Ashington Family Hubs, but looking on how you reach those people, you've talked about the MANS app, but for young people, is there any development of an app for younger people to try and reach the family hubs? I'm just conscious to how young people know that it's there, looking through the Facebook page quickly there's nothing really that stands out that says to me for my 13-year-old or my 19-year-old that there's a family hub here. So I'd just like to know a little bit more about how you're engaging with young people themselves to how they want to see it develop. And one of the things I want to ask is, I believe the Trailblazer funding ends next year, so what's the forward plan and where's the money going to come from going forward? Because we can't just have this wonderful, we'll rebrand Sure Start into Family Hubs and we'll claim it for ourselves as an amazing thing, and then stop the funding and then pinch funding from, say, a public health budget and then other services suffer. So I'd like to know what the plan is. Thank you.
So yes, communication with young people, absolutely really important. I think I mentioned about the Early Help Partnership Board within the main report. So that is a board that we've set up to oversee the whole early help and prevention strategy right across the county. And that's going to be looking at, obviously, everybody's role in that, developing the programme in terms of the early help support right across, so not just family hubs. And as part of that, we have 5 work streams. And I think what we're sort of thinking about is 2 of those work streams are going to come into play where your question is concerned. So one of them is around child and youth voice, and we are looking at how we communicate with our young people. So we are mapping out, or continuing to map out, what groups do we have out there already. So we do have some social care groups, we have some inclusion groups. Look to see what the gaps are, which other groups do we need to support our family hubs to set up to be able to ensure we are gathering a wide range of young people's voices. I'm hopeful as well. I really want to look at setting up a young people's panel, which would mirror the parent carer panel. So we have, a set of young people in at least each of the hubs, if not wider, right across the county, to be able to mirror that, to be able to co-produce and to listen to our young people in terms of what they want and what we can do. So there's definitely work ongoing. I guess currently we use our Facebook, we use our Instagram, we do leaflet drops, it's word of mouth. But there is more to be done, and I do think, because looking at our current social media, I think it is geared mainly towards parent carers as opposed to young people. So I absolutely understand what you're saying, and we're going to be looking at developing something that is more for young people, so a youth voice type of social media to move forward, which will hopefully fill the gap. But then it's about asking our young people, how do you want to be communicated? Where do you look? I know they'll talk about TikTok and all of that type of stuff, which is over my head. But if that's what they're telling us, maybe that's the route we have to go down in the future. So there's definitely some work to be done there around, engaging older, our young people themselves without their parents and carers.
Graham, you want to come in?
Yeah, and just to have, as that's about taking it forward, but certainly the young people have been part of the surveys and work as we've been going through. Young people of all ages, actually, 6 upwards have been part of the surveys going through. But yeah, you're absolutely right about the funding. Now, our family hubs were subject to a thematic review by CQC in Ofsted last August. There was 6 authorities nationally were part of a thematic review. It wasn't written up for us individually, but the feedback for us was very positive. But one of the things we actually flagged, and has been flagged in the thematic review, which has just been published last week, I think, in terms of the findings, that the risk around funding is there, because the grant funding we get goes to March 25. We're already looking and planning and mitigating as far as we can in terms of that. That is already having some impact in terms of both staff retention and staff recruitment potentially. So that is a challenge, but we are looking at that now in terms of our family hub partnership, checking the risks are, how we can mitigate those in the absence of waiting for some national direction in terms of what the funding would and could and should be.
I've got 4 speakers. I'll tell you who they are, and then I just want to say something before I bring the first one in. So I've got Councillor Hill, Mr Hodgson, Reverend Lennox and Mark Swinburne. So just on the point of Councillor Watson's question about how we engage with young people, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I'm going to invite you to Cramlington. Councillor Swinburne and I are both smiling at each other when you've been talking. Cramlington Town Council has a youth provision team, and we're looking at some innovation around QR codes around the town, so young people can scan them with their phones to find out the range of activities. And I was out last night with one of the youth engagement teams there. They had about 20-odd young people. That was about 6:30, 7 o'clock last night. So there is lots going on, but I will invite you to Cramlington and have a look, because it's not about one person having all the answers. But I think that's a valid point. It is about how we actually get young people actually, 1, involved in production, but 2, actually getting involved in activities. So I'll put you on the spot. There's my sales pitch out the way for Cramlington. Right, Georgina Hill.
Thank you, Chair. This is evidently a really positive thing, and I hope you will use us, if you like, to help spread the word in any way we can help. Just one thing, it's in terms of a need that this doesn't seem to address. It addressed lots of needs. In fact, Hub, which suggests busyness and lots of people, is actually the opposite. And this links with my call for us to declare a housing crisis. And one thing that families need and young people need is space. There's lots of people living in seriously cramped conditions, sharing bedrooms with siblings and not having any space. I think it's really important for development to be used to being on your own. I don't think we can emphasise this enough. I mean, I had, for example, I could give you many, but just to give you one, an awful situation of a family in a cramped condition, and the daughter studying for her GCSEs. Couldn't find her one day, and she was in the broom cupboard. She got herself in the cupboard to have some space to study. So I'm wondering if we're using buildings, if we can help facilitate through this that need to simply give people some space.
Yep. So obviously our family hubs are open, free of charge for all of our families to use. They can be booked, and we do have a whole multitude of people that use them for anything. We do homework clubs, we do EOTAS use the buildings to do out school provision. There's all sorts of groups, and I can't name them off the top of my head, that they use them to book so that they can, deliver provision themselves. So it's not just about our timetable and what we deliver themselves, but there is spaces there that can be delivered or used for anyone really. My view is very much if a family or a child needs the space and wants to do something in the family hubs, then absolutely they're there as long as the space is available to be able to use them.
Worth sort of advertising it, because if you're talking about homework clubs, all sorts of support, but actually using that for the space, and to people to be aware of having that, because there's some really awful situations of people not having any time of their own, living in really seriously cramped conditions. I think that would be something to maybe communicate out that that's available for that purpose.
Graham, you wanted to come in as well?
Yeah, and I think the point about this, if we're going to do this effectively for our children, young people and families, it's got to be done in partnership across the board. And we've done a lot of work across our partnerships in terms of streamlining and maximising. But just an example with that, very clear links with our family hub work, with our poverty and hardship work and development around children and young people to support those families as well. So we're trying to pick those up and who might need, through whatever source out in the community base, wherever it is, that we can actually maximise all the resources that are there. But that continues to evolve and develop. I think that's absolutely right, Paul, too.
And again, what I would say, Councillor Hill, if you've got details of those individual families, I'm sure if you pass them on, we could actually get a one-to-one conversation going on to support. Mr. Hodgson, next, please.
Thanks. For a number of years, I was involved in the governing body of a school in a very, very deprived part of Sunderland, Pennywell, which probably reflects a lot of the social issues that you've got in South East Northumberland. And interestingly, one of the big worries was this growing number of 4-year-olds that were coming to school that were simply not school ready. And it was becoming a serious, serious problem. And when I tried to dig into this a bit more, they said it was the demise of Sure Start that they felt was one of the biggest factors in this. Now, it's great that it's coming back under the family hub. Have you got any data yet from schools who presumably previously were concerned of the increasing number of 4-year-olds that were not school ready? Your work is now fairly well established. You're working with a significant number of young families. Have you got any data from the schools to say, brilliant, this is now making a real difference? We've got fewer children coming to school that aren't school ready, which means that they're hitting the ground running, relatively speaking, in terms of their academic progress. And is that something you can put up for data, can celebrate? Because that is a massive, massive difference you're going to make to those children. It's not about just participation, about, yeah, we've got 2,000 families involved. Let's drill it down and say, what real difference, and have you got data that says we're making a real difference and those children are getting the best possible start in their education journey?
Graham, could you
I'll go first. It'll be a strategic answer in the first instance. So one of the things that we are developing, as I say, is our partnership approaches and governance. And one of the partnerships we have re-established is about Children and Young People Strategic Partnership, of which the Family Hub work will be a critical participant, but equally all our early years reports will go into that, as will a range of, as poverty and hardship, a whole range of things where we'll be bringing together that. And I think exactly that point will be one of the things we'll evolve in terms of some of the measures across that partnership about effectiveness. Absolutely, school readiness would be one of the things we need to look at across the partnership as well. And I'm sure Audrey will say a bit more about school readiness data. But again, as we're trying to think very broadly about everybody's responsibility, I think that absolutely will be one of the key areas of data for us as a partnership to make an assessment of the effectiveness of family hubs, but allied to the early years provision that there is, allied to other partner voluntary organisations, so we can actually start pulling that together more systematically. The answer is we wouldn't be able to give you that data now through that partnership because we're just evolving the measures that we want to test across the partnership, but we will have access to information that come through from education colleagues as well.
Thank you, Chair. Really good question, and actually it's a one that we ponder on routinely in terms of the Children and Young People's Partnership. So we have data, but it's in two separate pieces at the moment, and the whole purpose of bringing together the new, it's a slightly amended approach around our Children and Young People's Board, perhaps might be something that the committee would want to scrutinise in terms of the content of what we're looking at and why we're looking at that. In a future meeting, you might want to see that. But it is because actually schools are telling us it's changed in terms of the school readiness. There are still challenges, but they are different challenges to what we had previously. So actually, the work with family hubs and that connectivity is so important to ensure that we're able to try and get to that so much earlier. And the development of some wider teams within the family hubs, working with our early years team in school, joining that together in terms of our children's approach is our next stage of development.
So we'll definitely pick that up, I think, going forward, because I think that's a very valid question. So I've got Reverend Lennox now.
I believe there are many commendable aspects to this report, and I was particularly encouraged by some of the comments relating to dads, which I believe is a significant area in this. And on page 18, we've got 12% of adults attending JRPSs were dads, up from 5% in the previous year. That's an encouraging increase. But 12% is still quite low, isn't it, really, in that sense? And we should perhaps be looking more as to how we might involve and develop that aspect of dads, because I think dads do play a key aspect in all of this work.
Yeah, so we are constantly looking to ensure that dads and all male carers are fully involved as much as can be, right from conception all the way through the child's journey. And we're doing that by having a better digital offer. We've already talked about Dad Pad and having something digital, because a lot of our dads work, for example, so aren't included or feel excluded from everything to do with their baby, their child. You know, things tend to take place during the day, don't they? Where you go to, you know, your midwifery appointments during the day, your health visitor comes to your house during the day, sessions seem to be on during the day. So we're trying to think outside the box to make sure that there is sessions and support available outside of your traditional 9 to 5 working hours. And for those dads that don't feel like they want to come to something which they may say is traditionally a female I guess, event or a female task job. We're trying to make it so that they feel more comfortable by developing dad-only groups so that they can feel, you know, surrounded by like-minded people, as well as looking and talking to dads about, you know, what they want, what else can we do to support and encourage them, because it's better than it was, as you say, but it is much lower. We want 100% of dads involved, as we do 100% of mums involved in our provision.
Just before I bring Mark Swinburne in, then Les Bowman, just on the subject of dads, what's the biggest barrier to dads actually getting involved? Is it awareness, or is it that kind of like, I don't know, sort of presumption that all of these things are female, nothing to do with them?
From what I understand, it's traditional role models. It's you know, and I will say the caveat is it's not every dad, but what we do know, and this is national research, it's not just something that happens in Northumberland, is that it's traditional role modelling. It's the female that gets involved. It's the female that goes to midwifery appointments. It's the female that talks to the health visitor, even throughout the child's journey at school. It's the female, it's the mum that goes to the parents' evenings. It's not necessarily the dad. Now, that might be because of their circumstances around, traditionally, the dad would be out at work, but it's also around how professionals interact with dads as well. You know, it's when you go into a family home, who answers the questions? Do we talk to dads as much as we do the mums? You know, does a practitioner or a worker, because we're talking about, you know, sometimes a small child or a baby, ask dads, you know, how much milk is the baby having? What's the problem with sleep? It all tends to be back to this traditional role modelling, and COVID hasn't helped this. So what we know about COVID is that dads were excluded from parenting. So, you know, those parents that were expecting babies, I think our hospitals closed the door to dads. Dads weren't allowed to go to appointments, antenatal appointments, to checkups, to speak to a health visitor. So I think that's exacerbated the situation somewhat.
So before I bring Graham in, so my question to that is, how can we do things differently in Northumberland then, given what you've said? Because I know we I think are involved in some partnership with Newcastle United Foundation. We do a lot of work with dads. So my challenge back to you is, how can we do things differently in Northumberland for dads as part of what we're looking at today? And then Graham, or perhaps you want to answer that, Graham.
I'll go first, and I think we'll give a bit more. I think one of the things that the findings from the thematic review that was undertaken here was that our family hubs are inclusive. And in terms of that, so I think the answer to a lot of the questions will be how we shape our family hubs and how welcoming they are and how the questions are asked, to all the detailed information. That's for a range of inclusive reasons. We need to make sure everybody does feel welcome coming in there. The point I was going to make actually was that a broader, across the partnership, engagement with fathers and male carers is a priority across all of our partnerships. So starting off with our family hubs and registrars, we want to be engaging them at the point of pregnancy, you know, through our family hub and early registration. That goes right through to all our safeguarding and child protection work, whether there's an absolute push around the case work or the work with families, making sure, you know, whether the separated households, that the fathers are absolutely and actively engaged in terms of that. So there's a whole culture shift and practice and development around ensuring kinship approaches, but particularly adults, regardless of whether they're in the household or not, whether or not there's levels of risk or not. It's a whole partnership priority in terms of how we're doing that.
If I can bring in Mark Swinburne and then Les. Suzanne, was it specifically on that topic?
Professional men don't take it, and it's not valued. And I think until we get a more European model on paternity leave, where we have options in, that's not going to change very quickly. It's got to start at the beginning.
Quite right. Right, Mark Swinburne.
Trust me, Suzanne, as a dad, I was in early at the pregnancy stage.
Way too much information then. Yeah?
I wanted to pick up on that conversation. With regards to, you know, what Eve said, what everyone's said on that dad side, and going back a few years, when my children were very young, going along to Sure Start, I remember attending 1 or 2 sessions and being the only dad there. And the looks I got from the mothers, but also from the providers, and this is the stereotypes, you know, and it was that look as if to say, what are you doing here? Now, personally, you know, I'm the type of person, as, you know, I don't care, I'm here, but I can understand why other dads will be put off. Now, the fact that you've got the accessibility and the dad pad and you're putting on sessions, you know, specifically for fathers is great. But from an inclusivity point of view, I would hope that, you know, we could get to a point that we don't need that. Why should we have to have sessions just for dads and just for mums? And why can we not just have an integrated session and get to that point where we don't need to have separate sessions? Now, I understand that there will be times when, for particular reasons, there have to be separate sessions. But, you know, it's 2024. Why do we need to have separate sessions? And can we not just move on with these things and start to be grown up about it? That was my point on that. I'm really pleased to see the increased offer on the hubs. Sure Start didn't provide up to the age of 25. So we've expanded and we've improved. There's loads in this report that I could pull out and comment on for the improvement. One thing I wanted to ask, page 18 in your bubbles, it's got 262 successful PBR claims. Don't know what PBR is, so maybe someone can come back up on that. Item 5.9, it mentions about the recruitment for full-time young people support workers. That's great, because the full-time is sort of a 50% increase on the hours that we previously had on the part-time, which I know was disappointing, but it's a 50% increase on employment hours, so that's very, very welcome. Wayne's already stole me thunder about Cramlington, which I was going to go on about, because, you know, we have a youth and community team. As a town council, we provide youth clubs. We do have plans for expanding that provision quite significantly. We have a youth club, youth clubs, we have a youth council. The youth community are involved in the decoration of our underpasses, which has gone down massively. We don't have a hub in Cramlington, but you're more than welcome to come along and chat, as Wayne has said, with our youth team and see what we provide. And I would like to think that we can link up, you know, with that. And take that forward. One thing I do want to ask, item 5.7. So in October 23, 2 further consultations took place, and you've got the results telling us about the main barriers. And the first bullet point on there is distance and travel time. I would like to see the information that come out of there to see are some of the barriers about where the locations of our hubs are, and is it telling us that we need more in different locations? So that's what I wanted to discuss or bring up. Thank you.
Graham, if you take that up.
I think that's absolutely a fair point, and making the point about the partnership working, that it's actually knowing what is available from whatever organisation in that locality, and it would depend on the need. And I think one of the things that have come out of the work of the family hubs, and particularly development here, is about mapping and understanding in much more depth and detail what the provision is in each of the localities, and making sure that young people can be linked there. And I think whilst there will definitely be issues still about distance and travel time, I think being able to understand there may be provision that might be more appropriate and more accessible for that young person with that work that we've done to understand that across the partnership. And I make the point also just about thriving together, kind of developing the support through the voluntary sector in terms of both funding opportunities, but linking the network there to make sure that's evolving in partnership as well, alongside the family hub work. So I think in its entirety, that should be looking at those things. But again, absolutely right, that still remains an issue that should be looked at in each locality, and how we can mitigate travelling issues where it's not there. But I think we do need to understand there is more provision there than we probably understood previously.
Les, welcome as well.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to move to Cramlington, doesn't matter how wonderful it is. I know it is a wonderful place, but
Sadly, the press
I'm
have
going to
left,
stay
so they'll not
put.
get that quote in, but I'll use it.
I'd rather be where the trees are and beautiful countryside. I'm thinking about the future. Northumberland County Council is 110 miles long, 70 miles wide. It is a vast county. The population is spread out throughout the whole county, but mainly in the southeast. We've got black areas, as it were, where there is no family hub centres. Is the future to build on this? Are we going to have family hub centres in other places throughout the county? And my second question, which is related to the forwarding of this work, are we going to focus onto our youth work within the county as well? I attended a new youth service which has been established in Astley Park at Seaton Delaval, which will be providing a service to the whole of Seaton Valley. And it's absolutely amazing. The young people are really excited about it, and they're thrilled to bits because September of last year, that service was cut, no consultation, but just gone. And we've got it back in action, which is absolutely amazing. And I'm sure the young people will do amazing job within Seaton Valley of preaching how wonderful it is. And it is, it's phenomenal. So we're going to look into our young people's support throughout the county, not just in Seaton Valley, but throughout the county. What is the plan for our young people?
Well, I think as Marie's already laid out, one of the work streams sitting under the Family Help Partnership is how we'd further develop and evolve that offer. And I think what I hope's come through this paper and our conversations here is about our understanding of the range of provision that there already is and how we understand and develop that further and note where the gaps are. And that's where would try and develop it through whatever means, whether that is through the Family Hub or local authority provision, whether that's through voluntary sector grant funding, whether it's through provision through other statutory, whatever it is, that's what we need to understand. There's a very specific work stream that will be looking at evolving and developing all those. So absolutely committed to the focus on, well, children and young people of all ages, but I think it's right, and I think the opportunity has been taken here for us to maximise the support for older young people, as it were, through this work. And there's much more to do on it, but I think we've moved a long way in a positive way. I think in terms of future funding, that is out of our hands, but what we would do is maximise whatever we've got to make sure we keep developing what we have already put in place.
Thank you for that. So I'm not seeing any other hands indicating to speak. I think we've had a really good deep dive into this, and I think there's a number of really good suggestions. I just want to do a little temperature check before we move on. A number of speakers this morning have raised the issue of men being involved in that really important first 1,001 days. We have an opportunity to put a task and finish group together, and I'm just wondering how you would feel about a task and finish group, about how we can look to improve involvement of men in the first 1,001 days of life. And I just wonder whether people think that would be something that could support.
Could we go on that slightly?
Go ahead.
Instead of having it the first 1,001 days of... Sorry. Instead of having it from the first 1,001 days of life, can we have it at pregnancy throughout? Because I think that is one of the things that we've noted multiple times. And thank you for mentioning that during COVID, because that was my experience as well. So if we could maybe take that from pre-birth through.
Yeah. I'm not seeing anyone objecting. So on that basis, I'd be really happy if we were to put that forward as a task and finish for this group. We obviously need to do it within time frame. We need to have it ready before January or by January.
Latest.
But at the latest, we'll try and get a bit quicker. So what we'll do is, I think we'll take, we don't need to do this meeting now, but it'll be Councillor Chicken who chairs a task and finish. So we'll, Sean will work with Councillor Chicken to identify if you want to be involved in that task and finish piece of work. And I would hope that we would bring in some of our strategic partners to help and maybe do a really good centred piece for for Northumberland. Les, do you want to come in just quickly before I move business
Just
on this?
quickly, Chair, I think we've got to recognise a generational shift in the last 70 years or so. And it is amazing, isn't it, that there has been a shift from this traditional, which was mentioned, the traditional view of a man going to work and a woman staying at home looking at a child. That is not the case today. Even myself, Chair, I work from home most of my life. My working life was from home. So I was at home with the children and so on. I did both. And today that is a good thing for a lot of men. It is become the sort of norm. A lot of us work from home. It started in COVID and it remains so. And we've got to recognise that generational shift, and it's been a good thing. And it's a good thing for our families. So let's champion that and build upon it.
Absolutely. Let's build upon it. I know Audrey needs to go now. Do you need to leave now? 5 minutes? That's fine. So obviously move this on the report. Les, I'm on the same page and with Mark because I actually delivered my first son, but that's another story. Right, so I am happy and I don't see anyone objecting. Let's move that report, and thank you very much for that, Marie and Graham. We then move on to the reports of the Scrutiny Officer. Sean, if you could take that, please.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, right. I think members will be familiar with the new format where we actually tell you what the Cabinet decided as well as what they're about to consider. So essentially that report is for information, but if any members want any clarification, let me know.
Yeah.
And the second item is the work programme. You've already got a few items established on it, and there are a few items that obviously we need to pick up from the meeting this morning that we'll feed into that,
Great.
Including obviously circulating details of the task and finish group.
Great, thank you. I have got no ordinary business. Just bear with me a second. Oh, sorry, if it relates to this, Councillor, I'll take that, yeah.
Thank you. It's just on the forward plan. Could we have something regarding an update on what's happening with the Berwick Schools partnership and the rebuilding programme? The concern I have is of the delays, the capital being shifted, lack of confidence in the political will to drive this forward. And I know that the schools have been told that the building won't be ready for, is it January, when they were moving to the two-tier system. So I think there's a range of conversations that need discussion. So if we could have it on that area on the forward plan, that'd be really helpful.
We'll bring a report, and I'll have a chat with Audrey following this meeting to bring you hopefully some assurance on that. I've not been informed of any urgent business, but I do want Audrey very quickly to tell us about an inspection, and then I'll bring you in, Councillor Watson, because I know Audrey needs to leave, but this is quite important.
Thank you. Grim might chip in as well. So just to advise committee members that on Monday I took a phone call from His Majesty's Inspector, and we have the inspection of local authority children's services that commences on Monday next week. So Monday to Friday the inspectors will be on site here a little bit, but mostly out in the centres, particularly that we've talked about today. So this has been a very busy week. It's the field work, it's the gathering. It is very organised, to assure everyone. It's calm. It's a well-oiled team in terms of our approach. The last pieces of data have to be sent through in case information by 5 p.m. today. So all well organised. Meetings are all in diaries. I advised Cabinet, Scrutiny Chair, Lead Member and our Shadow Lead Members and Group Leaders earlier this week of the inspection notification. We have been waiting for it for over a year. Graham and I have avoided booking holidays, knowing that on a Monday we could get a phone call. And that is serious. We have considered every time, because this is big for the authority. We are currently good judged local authority. Our last inspection was January 2020, just pre the pandemic. So it is a short inspection, and they arrive with the assumption that we are good. and they will consider if we have maintained that good, improved it, or declined in any areas. And we'll have the report. We'll have initial findings by the end of the inspection, which remain confidential. They clearly have to be quality assured. And then we'll go through the process, receive draft reports, and we'll expect that to be published early July.
Thank you. And just for context, I was the lead member in 2020 when we had the inspection, which moved us from the previous rating in 2016 of requires improvement. We went to good in 2020, and I have every confidence that the team are going to maintain and hopefully improve that. So, and I'm sure I speak for all members that if there's anything that we can do to support on that inspection, we're more than happy to help. Councillor Watts, I'll bring in, and then I'll close the business this morning.
It was just for something else on the work programme. We've had the handover from active to the people in places now, but haven't seen anything here about whether that's going to have an impact on holiday services, nursery provision, SEM provision across the county.
So communities in place are actually onto that one.
Right.
So what I would suggest is if you want to have a chat with Sean, because that's your scrutiny group?
It is,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Sean can table a question for you, particularly on that one. Suzanne.
Yeah, and it was another ask for, could we have a review of our statutory requirements for counselling in schools as well to be put on, please?
We'll pick that up. Go on, I'm indulging you.
Quickly, can we please have an update when the local offer is going to be launched, the new local offer? Been waiting a while for that.
Audrey, you can answer that
It's
one.
already on. I can tell you, I think, buried in my emails from yesterday, I'm sure it says within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's good to go. So I will confirm that to you, Councillor Scott. I'll send you an email and just confirm when that is.
Great. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Good luck with the Ofsted inspection. You don't need it because it's going to be marvellous. And thank you everyone for your time this morning, and we'll see you on the 4th of July.